Hey everyone, thank you and welcome back to a brand new episode of Coffee with Bearded Reviewer. And today, folks, is a episode that is a lead up to the most anticipated MCU film probably ever since Avengers Endgame. It is Spider-Man No Way Home. And this is a much anticipated film that potentially stars Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield as the previous Spider-Man, because it's already confirmed that we actually do have specific actors that played the villains in their own Spider-Man movies. So there's a lot of backing of these possible legendary actors who played Spider-Man before Tom Holland. But here's a disclaimer for you. It's not 100% confirmed that these actors are in the movie, but it's very likely that these characters could be in the movie. Probably at least by the third act of the movie. Spider-Man Homecoming was the beginning of this really amazing trilogy that is going to lead up to the one that's coming out next week. And I thought this was the best way to start my review series talking about Spider-Man Homecoming. So let's get started with today's review. Spider-Man Homecoming, it stars Tom Holland, and it also stars Batman himself, Michael Keaton, playing the Vulture. And the cool thing is that I really enjoyed how much they just kind of did a lot of world building in this one, because you actually got to see other villains that we all know from the comic books, such as the Tinker, the Shocker, and even Scorpion. So there's a lot of these references to specific villains. I mean, they're not outright going these are the villains. But you know what? One thing I've just really appreciated is that they at least showed them, because if they turned out to be good characters, that down in the future that they could somehow bring them back into a future film. And so I think that's the very thing that I really enjoyed about this movie, is that it just did such a good job with the world building, because this is a movie that came just directly after Captain America Civil War, after the entire world just went Tom Holland, you nailed it in Civil War. We want you back to have your own Spider-Man movie. And this is the result of a Spider-Man movie that was brought down to kind of a more personal story. Because one thing that is just so good about this film is that it felt very low scale in comparison to all the other previous Marvel Cinematic Universe movies, because the way I see this movie, it's a very personal one. It definitely feels upscale, but very low scale at the same time. Especially just kind of how they structured the third act, because it was not a big scale climactic battle between an alien race trying to invade planet Earth. No, it's a battle between an old guy who got wronged by Tony Stark, because Tony Stark, he started this whole thing called damage control, and he kind of took Vulture and a lot of these other villains, he kind of made them become jobless, because their main job was to help out with damage control. They were there at the Battle of New York, and they were just doing their job. They were just doing everything they can to clean up the street, completely rebuild New York after the destruction that happened from the Chitauri and from Loki. So these guys, they were wronged by Tony Stark. I mean, that's just kind of the one thing that is just kind of the underlying theme of Iron Man, is that despite the fact that Iron Man has so much goodness in him, but a lot of his goodness really ruffles feathers with a lot of people. I would say that Iron Man has made more villains from him directly. He has made more villains than any other character in the entire franchise. And that's just... And it seems that is staying more prevalent even up to No Way Home. Because it feels that Jamie Foxx, from the trailer, it looks like he has Stark tech on him to make him more in control of his electric powers. I just really liked the touch that they did with Robert Downey Jr.'s Iron Man, because it felt like that he was kind of like that father figure that Peter Parker needed, because like we all know his origin story. We've seen it twice already with Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield. Like us as a world, we already know where he comes from, and I just really enjoy that they didn't have to retell that story for the third time, which I think was a very smart move because we already got to meet him in Civil War. But the thing is that they didn't do that, which I'm very happy that they did. But I just really enjoyed just kind of like the nuance that they brought with Iron Man being for him to be kind of like the role of Uncle Ben. Because, I mean, like, without a doubt, I mean, like, Uncle Ben, he's been there, done that. But we still have Aunt May by Marissa Tomei. And it feels like that Aunt May is just getting younger and younger and younger every single adaptation. But jokes aside, like, I just really just enjoy the element of kind of like the fatherhood that Tony Stark has for Peter Parker. Like, the way I see it is that Peter Parker was kind of like his practice child before he had Morgan. Because I really think that he just understood more of what it meant to be responsible for someone else. And I just really enjoyed that element with Iron Man in this movie, because instead of him doing like the Uncle Ben route, in one particular scene, Peter Parker says, "I am nothing without this suit." And this is a suit that was given to him by Tony Stark. He feels like that he's complete as a superhero. But Iron Man is going like, if you're nothing with this suit, then you shouldn't have it. And that just screamed out, with great power comes great responsibility. I think they just worded it so perfectly. It was not exactly with great power comes great responsibility, but it's just as equal to that phrase like what Cliff Robertson said back in the original Spider-Man movie. But I just absolutely love the nuance, just the duality of Tom Holland and RDJ. They just had that good chemistry with each other. And I really enjoyed the chemistry between Tom Holland and Jon Favreau as Happy. Like, he has a few good father figure characters in this movie, and so like it's really all about him accepting the fact that he's a hero, but he needs to live up to making sure that he's going to be responsible to ensure not just the safety for others, but to be using his powers for not for himself, but for others. And I even really enjoyed the friendship that he has with not Harry Osborn, but with Ned. And Ned is actually a really nice, new, fresh take on a best friend character. And I would have to say that he is probably the most useful best friend ever since, probably Sean Astin from Lord of the Rings as Samwise Gamgee. Like, very helpful. Like, he actually helped the hero. Like, he is a good secondary character that's a best friend to the hero. And he just had some of the best one-liners. Really funny. Overall, a lot of the characters in this movie just work so well. Aunt May from Marissa Tomei, she had a small role, but she did what she had to do. And I just really enjoyed just kind of like the nuance, that it felt like I was back in my teenage years when Tobey Maguire was Spider-Man. That's what it felt like to me. And I'm just very looking forward to seeing what they're going to do more with Tom Holland's Spider-Man. But the very issue that I really have with this movie, and I'm going to talk more about this particular nitpick that I would say, is actually the fact that Spider-Man in the comic books, he is a really good superhero by himself without the help of like others. I mean, he still has that because like he still needs help from Ned, from Iron Man. But the good thing is that he was able to showcase how very strong he is when he is actually taking full responsibility of his own actions, taking responsibility of his own power. And one particular scene that I just loved the most out of any Spider-Man films is the scene when the Vulture finds out who Spider-Man is. Michael Keaton, oh my gosh, when I saw the scene when he's all like, things doesn't seem to add up here. But then all of a sudden he's all like, wait, you were in DC? Spider-Man was in DC. He was outside of DC. And like, he was at my house and Spider-Man was around. Oh, so Peter Parker is Spider-Man. And just the nice little touch that they added is that when he was thinking of like, things are not really adding up here, the light was red, but then when the light turned green for him to go, he's all like, good old Spider-Man. He knew who he was. And just that small little detail was so impactful, because for some reason most of the villains to Spider-Man has the theme of green, and I just absolutely loved the concept that they did with that, because the green light was like, ding, Spider-Man right behind you. But overall, that was just like a great little piece of detail that I can appreciate so much. But not to mention that Michael Keaton, he is like the Walter White of the MCU. Full hands down, like, Michael Keaton, such a great actor. He nailed the role of the Vulture. He's just a guy who got wronged, and all he wants to do is support his family. Like, he is salvaging Stark Tech and sell it to the black market only to make some money for his family. I mean, like, I just absolutely love the low scale of the story, but it was so impactful for specifically Spider-Man. But this was a nice surprise movie in the MCU. I would definitely place this one to be in like my top 10 Marvel Cinematic Universe films. Definitely in like probably the top 5 Spider-Man films. I'm still gonna give you my the list of worst to the best Spider-Man films, but that is going to be after I see the new one that is coming out next week, so look out for a video on that. But anyways, this is a great movie, and it's a great solo beginning for Spider-Man, especially for a younger one, because we can really have Tom Holland for like the next 20 years if he wants to be Spider-Man for that long. Like, we got to see him in his high school years, now we're going to see him in his college years, and more movies if they want to do like more like college years, then after college, and then him being a parent. I mean, like, Tom Holland is so young, like, he could do this for so long. And the cool thing is that he did most of his stunts, which is so fantastic. I love it when actors are more like that. Like, he is the young Tom Cruise. That's what he is. Like, I really think that Tom Holland is going to be the new generation Tom Cruise. That's the way I see it. But either way, great film. I would have to give this movie a good 8.3. And you know what? As much as I want to give it a higher ranking, I just feel like that there were some pacing issues. These are just more kind of like nitpick moments, but like a good villain. But I felt like that they could have done more with the villain, especially when it came to the climactic battle. But I just really liked it, how they just tied up loose ends in the ending. And they just did a good job with the world building. So anyways, yeah, that was my ranking for Spider-Man Homecoming. And if you all don't know this, I actually did do a review for this movie, but this was at the time when I was just starting this channel. Spider-Man Homecoming was actually my very first review on my channel, but that was at the time when it used to be something else, but I had to rebrand, and then I had to like come up with a new formula. So I'm really happy that I got to revisit this movie and give you a fresh new take on how I feel about this movie, and I am really happy that I got to do this. So thank you so much for watching. Keep on drinking coffee, and I will see you guys next time.